This is Holy Week Explained. Holy Week is the shortest season of the church year. It is determined by the placement of Easter. Easter is the first full moon, the Sunday after the first full moon, after the equinox, March 22nd. So it can be from the 23rd until well into April. This year, of course, it's in April. We are coming up on Palm Sunday. The liturgies for Holy Week, the busiest week of the church year, and really the foundation of the entire church year, is in Holy Week. And he begins with the Sunday of the Passion, called Palm Sunday. And there are really two liturgies here. The first is the blessing and processing of the palms. Usually this is done in most places in a place separate from the church, and so people are outside waving the palms and usually singing "All Glory, Laud, and Honor" is the hymn that is most commonly sung at that time, although there probably are others. Before the liturgy itself has a reading, which basically talks about foal of an ass is covered with robes, and Jesus is set upon it, and it's his triumphal entry into Jerusalem during Passover week, or at the beginning of Passover week. And branches of palms are waved and spread before him on the ground as he enters. That is followed by the Sunday Eucharist, which has readings specifically for Passion Sunday. So it is the reading of the Passion, which is also read fully on Good Friday. There are readings every day in Holy Week. So there is a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday that have special Eucharistic liturgies, Thanksgiving, communion service. And then on Thursday is called Maundy Thursday, and it is a very dramatic liturgy in that it begins with the ceremony of the washing of feet, and it ends with the altar and all of the paraments and all of the hangings and vestments are removed, and the altar is stripped and usually washed at that time. And if there has been what's called the altar of repose, which means there is Eucharist that is consecrated for Good Friday, and there is placed on the altar that Eucharist and a candle, denoting that it is consecrated and it is holy, and it will be consumed on Good Friday. The washing of the feet is what Jesus did for his disciples. He presents us with a servant ministry, and Maundy Thursday is central to understanding that and understanding Jesus' message. Also, the service of Maundy Thursday is a focus on what has come to be called the Last Supper, which is sort of the paradigm for Holy Communion, though in reality, all the suppers that Jesus had throughout his life with his disciples are the paradigm for that. Because he blessed and broke the bread and passed the wine at virtually every meal that he celebrated with his disciples. On Good Friday has the solemn collects, which appear throughout the year in morning and evening prayer. The solemn collects really pray for virtually everything. There is usually a prayer, and then there's silence, and then there is a collect that follows. So, for instance, we pray for the Holy Catholic Church of Christ throughout the world, for its unity, for all bishops, for our bishops specifically, for all Christians, for those about to be baptized, because Easter and Holy Week are the preparation for baptism very frequently for many people. And it was a great celebration on Easter of the first communion that people had received in the community. Prior to this time in the early church, they would come to the service of the word, and they would hear the word, and they would hear the preaching, and at the peace they would leave. When they were baptized, then they could receive. We do it a little differently nowadays. And then sort of the final, this is either the first of the Easter services or the end, the celebrating end of Holy Week, the Easter Vigil on Saturday night, usually after sundown, following the Jewish tradition. There are really 4 services in this. There is a service of light, there is a service of lessons, there is a service of initiation, which means either renewal of baptismal vows or baptisms, and if the bishop is present, confirmations. And then there is the Holy Eucharist. So there are 4 services. It generally lasts about an hour and a half, depending on how large the group is. The first service, the service of the lighting of the Paschal Candle, the Paschal Candle is that large candle that you see, usually it's near the font, the baptismal font, but it is the symbol of Christ. And when it is lit next to the baptismal font, it is the symbol of Christ standing over this. But in this service, the Paschal Candle is not lit, and it is lit from the new fire. That is fire that is created, and the Paschal Candle is lit from that, and then generally everybody else has a candle, and those candles are lit. So we can see in the dark, really, the light going forth from the light of Christ. And then that is the great song of this service of light is called the Exultet. When there is a deacon present, the deacon is the one who is supposed to sing it. And it goes a little bit like this. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you'll get an idea. The light of Christ, thanks be to God. In this process, the Paschal Candle is processed down the aisle toward the front of the sanctuary, and candles are lit for everybody else. And that is done 3 times. The light of Christ, thanks be to God. The light of Christ, thanks be to God. And going up to a different key each time. And then the Exultet is sung. Rejoice now, heavenly hosts and choirs of angels, and let your trumpets shout salvation for the victory of our mighty King. Rejoice and sing now, all the round earth, bright with a glorious splendor, for darkness has been vanquished by our eternal King. Rejoice and be glad now, Mother Church, and let your holy courts in radiant light resound with the praises of your people. All you who stand here, this marvelous and holy flame, pray with me to God the Almighty. And it goes on from there. Then the deacon sings further. It is truly right and good always and everywhere with our whole heart and mind and voice to praise you, the invisible, almighty, eternal God, and your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. And this is the Exultet in full bloom. And it is a marvelous prayer of praise and adoration. And that is the first liturgy, just the first small part, about a half an hour usually, maybe, depending on the size of the crowd. And then we have the reading of the lessons. The church is still dark. By that time we have put out our candles so we don't burn each other. And then there is a collect and a reading. And there are a number of readings. Some read 5 or 6 or 7 readings, but they are the story of creation, the flood, Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac, Israel's deliverance at the Red Sea, God's presence in a renewed Israel, salvation offered freely to all, a new heart and a new spirit, the valley of dry bones, and the gathering of God's people. Usually there's a selection from those. Generally, the deliverance at the Red Sea, the creation story, the deliverance at the Red Sea, and the gathering of God's people from Zephaniah. Those are generally done almost everywhere. But that's the second liturgy, and it is you're sitting in the dark and you're listening to the story of salvation from creation to its fulfillment in Jesus. The third liturgy of the great vigil of Easter is the renewal of baptismal vows. It can also be baptism itself, if there are people to be baptized, and if the bishop is present and there are people, confirmation, because confirmation is the completion of the baptismal covenant. But usually it is the renewal of baptismal vows for all of us. And then the fourth liturgy is the Eucharist. There is a short, there are a couple lessons and a sermon. And what happens at the end of the rite of initiation, right before the altar, the lights are turned on, and if you have bells, you ring the bells. It's quite a dramatic experience. I remember going to an Easter vigil in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and the rector was a converted Baptist. And he was afraid that if they celebrated Easter at the Easter Vigil, that people wouldn't show up for Easter. But I told him that my experience was they come to both. Once they realize what a wonderful liturgy the great vigil is, they come to both. But the problem was he had no Easter hymns, and as my stepdaughter Chloe, who was about 4 or 5 at the time. She said, "Don't we get to dance?" It's a joyous and wonderful service, and we didn't dance at that one, but it was a disappointment. But the Great Easter Vigil is a wonderful celebration of resurrection. And then, of course, Holy Week is over with the Great Easter Vigil. And there is going to be an Easter Vigil at Grace and Holy Trinity Cathedral. It will be a virtual experience that you can experience on Facebook through the Facebook page of the cathedral itself in Kansas City. It will be at 7 on Saturday, and they have a wonderful organ and choir, and it'll be a great, incredible celebration, and it'll be streaming beginning at 7. So you can experience the Easter Vigil. We at St. Peter's will be doing some things to celebrate throughout Holy Week. We're still organizing that, but in general, the virtual services will be at 7 in the evening, and I'm learning how to stream, so we will stream those as well. Anyway, Holy Week, short but powerful. The foundation of the entire church year is in Holy Week. Thank you.